I have met many men. I have seen many lands. I have known many emotions. All of them, I think, except that of hate. I have played many parts. From all this sum of things tangible or intangible, hidden now in the heart and the memory, some essence may perhaps be pressed which is worthy of preservation. Some picture painted at which eyes unborn may be glad to look. At least, such is my hope. It is, of course, impossible for anyone, yes, even a nun in a convent, to set down life's every detail for the world to stare at, unless indeed such a person were prepared to order the resulting book to be buried for, let us say, 500 years. Could such a work be written by a hand adequate to the task, its interest as a human document would be supreme. Also, it would be beautiful in the sense that the naked truth is always beautiful, even when it tells of evil. Yet I believe that it will never be written, for were the writer mean enough to draw the veil from the failings of others, he would certainly keep it wrapped about his own. That was written by H. Rider Haggard in his autobiography, The Days of My Life, which was written in 1912 and then locked away to be published posthumously in 1926. H. Rider Haggard, very influential writer of adventure stories. He was born June 22nd, 1856. He died May 14th, 1925. And he's not read too much nowadays, but he was enormously influential. Best known today for a couple of books, King Solomon's Mines, which you can still find in an Oxford edition. You can get a Penguin edition. There are other editions of that book. And my favorite book of his, which is this one, this is She, for She Who Must Be Obeyed, which is an absolutely fantastic Lost World novel. It's great. But H. Rider Haggard wrote a ton. You'll only find a few of his books in print nowadays. But just about all of it, not all of it, I don't think, but just about all of it, I think, is in the public domain. So you could read a ton of H. Rider Haggard if you don't mind reading on an e-reader. And I have a lot of H. Rider Haggard to read, which is good. Because in January, there is a brand new event called Haggard January. It's Haggard January, Roger, which was created by Randy Ray, the literate Texan. And there are a few co-hosts, and I am one of them. And it's a reading event devoted to reading H. Rider Haggard. And I will read some H. Rider Haggard in January. I'm not going to be following any monthly or any weekly, I should say, prompts or anything like that, just because I've got a lot on my plate in January. But I wanted to return to H. Rider Haggard for quite some time because he is a fascinating figure and he's a great writer. And like I said, tremendously influential. He was very influential on writers like Edgar Rice Burroughs, Robert E. Howard, a lot of other writers of adventure stories. Not too popular nowadays, probably for when he wrote and the kinds of things that he wrote. He was an imperialist in the height of the British Empire. And that, frankly turned some people off, of course. But he was an interesting, complex guy. He did have prejudices, of course, as you would expect a writer to have at that time. But he actually lived in Africa. So unlike writers like Edgar Rice Burroughs or almost all the pulp writers that you'll come across from the early 20th century who wrote about Africa, H. Rider Haggard actually spent a lot of time in Africa. And so he knew a lot about it, and he knew about the Africans who lived there. And so his writing always has more of a sense of authenticity to it, even when he was writing about, frankly, fantastic things. And as a writer, he was excellent. He was a really solid writer. And his stuff is well worth reading. It's kind of a shame that it hasn't entirely been forgotten, particularly here on YouTube. Die-hard readers, a lot of die-hard readers know the name H. Rider Haggard, and many have read, at least they've read She, and perhaps King Solomon's Mines, perhaps even its sequel, Alan Quatermain. Alan Quatermain, the hunter, the big game hunter, is almost certainly his most popular character, a character that was in a series of books. Interestingly, the first two novels in that series, King Solomon's Mines and Alan Quatermain, chronologically are the last books in the series. They take place towards the end of Alan Quatermain's life. And of course, She Who Must Be Obeyed, who was in a sequel, The Return of She, and she was also in a crossover story with Alan Quatermain, She and Alan. I think it was She and Alan, unless it was Alan and She. I can't really remember off the top of my head. And he also wrote the Viking novel Eric Bright Eyes, which was published along with a lot of other novels back in the 1960s and 1970s. Haggard became sort of rediscovered in the 1960s after Edgar Rice Burroughs became really popular. He was never entirely forgotten, but you did get a lot of paperback editions from around that time. And just this year, I read People of the Mist, which was a fantastic adventure story, and it really made me think, yeah, I definitely have to go back to reading H. Rider Haggard, which I will do starting in January, and then I'll read some other H. Rider Haggard novels throughout the year, I think. But I am going to be reading in January his autobiography, which is The Days of My Life, which he wrote in 1912. That is not a book you'll find in print, I don't think, unless you get a print-on-demand copy, or you're just really lucky to get some old-timey copy. But it is available for free on the internet. It is in the public domain. So I will be reading that because he's an interesting guy, and I would like to learn more about H. Rider Haggard, and it'll be interesting to hear him talk about his own life. Apparently, from what I hear about this book, there's nothing shocking in this book, as you would expect from that little bit that I read at the beginning of this video. But he does talk a lot about the work that he did over the years and his experiences in other countries and things like that. I hear he doesn't talk much about his writing. But he does talk a lot about what he considered his service to Britain and the different things that he did outside of his writing. So that'll be interesting. It was originally published as a 2-volume work. I think in print it runs, depending on the edition, it would be 350 to 400 pages or something like that. But that is what I've decided to read. I thought that would be an interesting way to start getting back into this writer, is to learn more about his life from, his own autobiography. I don't know if the book is any good. Autobiographies sometimes are not. I will let you know what I think of it. But in January, that is when this event happens, if you would like to join along, like I said, a ton of his books are available for free on Project Gutenberg. I've only read a fraction of what he wrote. I mean, he wrote a lot. He's one of those writers like, Jules Verne and a lot of other writers, H.G. Wells. He's one of those writers who wrote a ton, but only a fraction of what they wrote is in print. But you could find it all for free. And that's certainly the case of H. Rider Haggard. Such an influential writer and such an interesting guy. So just thought I'd tell you about that, about this fantastic event, Roger, which is coming up in January. I will list the co-hosts down below. They've already put out announcement videos for this. And it'll be an interesting little project for 2026 because I just don't have enough. I don't have enough projects, Roger. Okay, guys, I We'll catch you next time.